Thank you so much for coming to our Fast Forward Files book presentation tonight. But today you have to work with me, let's say some minutes. We will talk about you, Shafi Ahmed, I hope the pronunciation is right, about democratizing surgical education. So first of all, what is your morning routine? What are you doing in the morning?
Morning, I get up quite early.
Really? What is early?
5, 6 in the morning. I don't sleep much, only because over the years of being a surgeon, used to waking up fairly early. Our starts are early in the operating theatre. And then, like most people, I'll turn to social media straight away in terms of accessing information, a few emails, I get up, and then I kind of do a little bit of exercise, and then I get to work fairly early for operating theatre. I start about 7:30 in the morning, so it's a fairly regimental morning that I have. I
see. So there's no so you have no meditation styles or whatever. You're just focused on the job.
Yeah, no, I just kind of become more functional, I guess, over the course of many years, and I just get on with the job at hand almost. And always I feel that I should spend more time thinking and perhaps spending time outside the workplace.
I see. So what is your job really about? What kind of job do you have?
So I'm a consultant surgeon.
Yeah.
My specialty is colorectal.
Yeah.
And I spend my life looking after cancer patients, both from the diagnosis to treatment, which is surgery, and I'm a laparoscopic keyhole surgeon, and then manage their care throughout their lifetime, if you like. So I'm a cancer specialist, but mainly from the surgical perspective.
I see. So if you talk about education in your field, what do you think about the education you have got?
So if you think about my life and how I've been educated as a surgeon, for example, we used to work many hours for a long period of time. We used to work something like 120 hours a week almost. In fact, my contract when I qualified was around 72 to 100 hours per week, which is really a lot, right? And that we learnt by just the sheer amount of volume of hours we worked. It wasn't all very much quality, it was just the volume. And in those days, we worked, we think, about 36,000 hours over the course of a training lifetime. And now, of course, things have changed. The same training that's now today is about 6,000 hours. So it's about, sixth of the time that we spent training. The question is, how can you convert that 6,000 hours to much more educational content that's more valid, and that makes it more objective? Ours was just a question of subjective being around for a long time, like an apprenticeship. I think we can do better. Yeah. So that was kind of our learning for many years over the course of time.
Okay, so what do you think about the system we are living in right now in the way of education, especially in your field? So what would you change?
I think we need to change a lot of things. I think the new generation of doctors, this is a kind of more of a kind of bigger picture, zooming out and connecting the dots. They're a different breed. The new generation Z, if you like, young doctors want to have a change. They're not going to work 100 hours a week anymore. They've made that well known. They want to have quality of life. They want to have a work-life balance. They want to travel. They want to have 2 or 3 careers. And there's a new concept out now called portfolio careers, where they do more than one job, for example. So the old-fashioned way of learning and training, having one job for life, I think has disappeared. What we're not doing is train them now to be doctors and surgeons in 2020, with a view to train them for the next 20, 30 years, and to maintain their interest in the discipline. So that requires a huge change of direction of thought, and creating jobs that are suitable for the new generation. And that's where the kind of the conflict is. The jobs that we still offer people are based on our own historical perspectives, which has now been moved on. We think about the new generation. How do we create a new workforce that's digital ready, that's going to find their place to solve the world's problems in today's world? And that's the kind of crux of what I've been trying to solve over the last few years.
And if we would have to judge, let's say that the doctors all around and the surgeons all around the globe, are they digital fit or not?
So health workers at the moment aren't ready.
Yeah.
As you know, there's the inventors, the early adopters, and they form maybe 1% of the population of healthcare workers, forget surgeons. So the ambition for us has to be, how do you train the other 99% of people in healthcare to go on this journey with you? And that's a huge commitment for all of us to figure that one out. If you look at surgery as a whole, we have a huge shortage of surgeons. If you look at healthcare workers in total, the World Health Organization reports by 2030 will be about 30 million health workers short. Okay? Now, that's a huge problem to solve. It's not going away. That's around the corner in 10 years' time. And we know the costs of healthcare are rising every year. with the GDP in every country requiring more and more money to be invested for healthcare to be affordable and accessible. So there's a conundrum. The price is going up, the amount of patients are increasing because of chronic diseases, and the amount of workforce is been reducing. So the question is, how do we figure this one out going forward? How do we train people differently, make it more efficient, and also how do we create a workforce that's ready for this kind of digital transformation world that we live in?
So in the future, if you talk about your profession, will we see more technicians or?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm really excited about, I think technology is an interface. It's an enabler. It's not the solution for everything. It'll help us. If you think about what we do as doctors, there was a report about 2 or 3 years ago that showed that junior doctors, for example, spent 70% of their time filling in paper forms on the computer, doing, just the things that we shouldn't spend our time doing. Now, that's an opportunity. If technology gets rid of that 70% of workload and lets them do the work they're trained for, that's far better. Technologies like, whether there's data coming in, bigger, better electronic health records, or even artificial intelligence, it's going to transform our lives, I think, making it better. And I think all these things will kind of coalesce to improve our work-life balance, okay? And people get scared about these technologies. I'm very optimistic. I think actually they can improve our life if we consider it long enough. And also I think they'll enable us to do the job that we train for, and also to evolve to create healthcare that seems much more relevant to the patient in the next 10 years. So I'm an optimist from that perspective, and a realist at the same time, of course.
So just imagine you're a patient, you are waiting for a surgery or whatever,
Yeah.
and then for a sudden there's a kind of mixture between human and, I don't know, like a Terminator, half man, half machine in front of you.
Sure.
And you really don't figure out what is going on right now. So I think when we grew up, there was this man in white, or
Yes.
women in white, and we believed everything because they were white dressed. Now we have machines, we have digital things. Sometimes the surgeons are not in the room, they are, I don't know, in another continent, another city. So is this the right approach to let's say, to keep up the trust in the profession of medicine, of doctors, and all the people working in this field?
That's a really good question. So look, if you go back historically, the role of a doctor and the patient is very much like you and I. We're sitting together, there's eye contact, we're talking, sometimes there's hand contact or touching because of the empathy. There's that whole humanistic value to being close to somebody that's close. And that's important, don't get me wrong, that's still very vital, but in certain circumstances. The problem with face-to-face contact, Heiko, is that it's too expensive. You being here, for example, today, is quite an expensive part of your life, right? Your time is precious. As a surgeon, as a senior surgeon, my time is precious. So the question for me now, how do we use that time more efficiently? So, for example, could you use telemedicine? Let's say, take a simple example. What if I'm remote to you? Okay, it's first level of interaction. The trust is with that person almost, right? You trust, even if they're remote, there's that conversation, there's eye-to-eye contact. And in fact, I've spent time in my own hospital actually on a beam system, the beam that you can travel around on a computer and your face appears on a screen, on an iPad kind of thing. And I've wandered around the hospital all the time, right? Seeing my patients, seeing my doctors and nurses, etc. What I found about that experiment was that initially when you're walking around in this kind of, with a face on an iPad, for the first few minutes people get surprised. It takes only a few minutes to adjust for normality. They're seeing you, they trust you. My patients are the same thing. Take that conversation to the next level. What's the next level of interaction? And that's where human interaction is going to change slightly. And I think what we're doing is redefining human interaction. What I mean by that is avatars, it's chatbots using AI interfaces, it's holograms. At that point, suddenly we can be anywhere in the world very quickly. So for me, the next 10 years, the first point of contact to a doctor is going to be an AI chatbot. So for example, you could then access, say you have a symptom of a cough. You could go into a chatbot, ask the right questions, it'll be a to and fro conversation that's quite intelligent, which will give the options available to you and triage you. Now, at the same token, if you have someone with a cancer diagnosis who requires the human approach, there'll be face-to-face contact still available for that. That can't disappear. It's still fundamental to what we do. But do you need to see every single person like that who has a cough or a cold? I don't think you need to. it can triage the work. So 80% of the workload can be managed in a different way. But therein lies a problem. Okay, we have to educate the public that this new healthcare system is going to change. The access will change. Access to the old system of healthcare will have to evolve to make it more accessible and affordable. So it's a big conversation. And what I call it sometimes, it's social re-engineering of society. We kind of expect a certain standard of what we do. How do you change that conversation? So in terms of surgery, what I find really exciting in this new world that we live in is the fact that in the next 12 months, 24 months, we'll see a plethora of robots coming into the market, making our lives easier. We'll do more and more sophisticated operations, which will be supportive. Also, we'll be using navigation tools in the operating theatre. So before, it's literally you go and operate, for me, it's opening the tummy and seeing what's going on, or using keyhole surgery. Now we'll have AI analytics. They'll look at where you are, point to dangerous objects or things that you might be near, navigate through the operation, and also provide objective data to show how well you're performing. And we've never had that before. We've only ever had subjective data on the outcomes. So I think we'll be more of a data-driven healthcare system. And surgery is ripe for disruption, I think, in that sense. We've been comfortable for too long with our ideas, the way we operate, the way we manage our patients, and that's going to change.
Once I read the book, it was from Atul Gawande, Being Mortal. And the book is really interesting because there was a statistic showing that the people 70 years ago, 85% of the people were dying at home, within their families. Now only 15% of the people are dying at home around their families. And then there was this kind of statistics showing where is humanity beginning and ending.
Yes.
And where is, let's say, machine support beginning and ending, you know?
Yes.
That's the metrics. So what is your point of view right now? Because that's the final step, the final mile in our life. What is your approach? Do you want to have robots and chatbots around you?
No, so I think this is where I think there's a balance of where technology, robots, whatever you decide to call them, what is the interplay with them and human beings. As I said before, as a cancer surgeon, when I break my bad news to a patient, I'm not going to do it remotely on a telemedicine platform or on a chatbot. That requires face-to-face contact. That requires empathy. That requires a holistic approach. I'm still very much important of that. And patients expect that and they deserve it. As you go through that process, that's important. My conversation is around, is it necessary for every single interaction with healthcare? Okay, and I don't think it is. I think we manage it differently. And I think that people will understand if they need to see someone for something quite delicate or something that requires the human interaction, interface with patients, doctors and nurses. They'll also understand at what point that may not be available to them, where they get information. Already, we're accessing information on, say, a council website through a chatbot, for example. We're not speaking to anybody. You try phoning somebody now on a phone number, you go through an endless array of phone calls and get messages. We kind of accept that almost, right? So already we've moved on to that phase where we're expecting different kind of information. So I think it's the balance. I don't think the patients are ready to give up the contact entirely, and they shouldn't need to either. This whole thing about machines replacing doctors is the wrong narrative. It scares people. We're not going to replace anybody. Technology's not going to replace any doctor. What they're going to do in the conversation that I like to have is they'll augment, they'll support, they'll improve your care. That's the narrative that needs to be sent out as a message to our patients who will then come on the journey with us. Then we need to start having this conversation that they're going to be replacing us tomorrow or the day after, how you can manage, and robots taking over the world. That's too scary, and that's too far-fetched for anybody at the moment.
I see, that's perfect. So you are now kind of part of the Fast Forward family. You know, we joined us, let's say, in October last year in Venice at the Fast Forward Forum. Now we have our product here, the book, Fast Forward Files. So what was your takeaway from Venice?
So I can't wait to see that first and foremost. That's the first thing. And I'll take away one very quickly. Venice was amazing for a number of reasons. Of course, the venue is seductive. It's a great venue for great artists in the past, and it's a beautiful surrounding to be creative. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think the way you managed to bring a group of people together from completely different disciplines, okay, who you'd never meet in any walk of life given your normal professional workload, with different insights to the world, different ambitions, different experiences, all coming together at the same point for a few days together. It was empowering. It was very educational, and it brought out parts of you that you hadn't really discovered for a long while, or maybe you never seen for a long while, about your experiences, about your emotions, about your thought process, and thinking differently sometimes. And so what it allowed me to do after FFF going away was the fact that you're thinking differently, you're thinking from different perspectives. I think it makes you a better human being, because we're very much one-dimensional. We get used to being comfortable in what we do, and actually we realise society is much broader, and actually people have different thought processes. All of those make us human as we are, as a society. So I've learned a lot from these people, and they're all inspirational, by the way. So first of all, there was an imposter syndrome. Thinking, I shouldn't be here, these people are amazing, doing amazing things, and I'm only a lowly kind of doctor in my world. Think about what amazing things that they've achieved in all disciplines. So it was inspirational, it was a wonderful, great experience. It was one of the best, I think, conferences, probably the best I've been on, because it was so different to the average conference that's prescriptive, that's got a known kind of mechanism. This was like, this is about you. Create something together, think differently, go away and learn and mature and let your brain kind of expand slightly, right? Open your eyes. So for that purpose, it was amazing. I really enjoyed the experience, meeting everybody, including, of course, yourself and everyone at the table here.
Thank you so much. I'm only your servant, So what is your advice for the next forum? What is your idea?
So I think it's about building. Obviously, you bring new people to the table, different disciplines, things we haven't thought about. I think the structure worked really well. I think it's good to have those conversations as we speak. I think the venue is important as well. I think that does matter, to have the nice environment where people can really think outside the box. And I think the bit about the conference is how do you bring the best out of humanity? That's the question you're asking. How do you bring creativity into the equation? How do you bring people's experiences and build on those experiences? And what does that look like? I think the unconference worked really well. The fact that we had talks in the kitchen while someone's making pizza behind you, on the terrace, in Guggenheim Museum. Is like, if you cannot get creative inside the Guggenheim Museum, then you shouldn't be at the conference. But I think what the elements are amazing is to push on to the next level. But I think, okay, what was it that was great? How do we expand on that? How do we bring more to the table? So I think it's a winning formula, but again, it can be improved again, of course.
Thank you so much, Shafi, to be on my side.
It's my absolute honour and pleasure.